Greetings folks, welcome back to the Craft Hammer. I'm your host Stefan, and in today we're going to be talking about the Chaos Knight tournament that I did in October and how I managed to go 3 for 3 on all the games that I did. This was a very surprising result. I honestly, as I said, I was not expecting to be able to get to such a stage, and I'll tell you at the very end what position I got, as it was still being counted with points. I'll need to also double check just in case, but I'm pretty sure I remember which pole position I got. Let me get into the 3 games that I managed to play, what happened, and I suppose what I'll be doing going forward. But for now, let me just quickly remind you guys of the list. If you are curious, you do see this in the previous 2 videos ago, I think. I'm pretty sure it's like getting ready for the October tournament, I think that's the title, whatever it is. But anyway, let me get you into the list. We have our Abominant, nothing special on them. I believe this is my Brigand, yeah, my Executioner, and my 2 Stalkers, one with a Gatling gun, one with the Melta. So a fairly bog standard list. Well, there was actually another Chaos Knight player who did have, from what I saw, a more competitive list, as in they were going with mostly War Dogs, and they were even using some Nurglings, I think, for actions or whatever they were supposed to be doing. It's definitely something I've seen online, especially in some of the Chaos Knights discussions, where it's a lot focus on the War Dogs, but that's not what we went. We just wanted to have a bit of fun with the Abominant, and of course bring the remainder in War Dogs, and it just worked out for me. I'll get into the first game and I'll tell you their list and how I managed to win. Unlike the first tournament, I can definitely see my improvement. Also, because of Knights, there's a lot less to worry about, so I didn't have to focus on a lot of different models, and because I only had 5 things to focus on, I was able to perform better, and especially when it came to positioning and movement, that helped a lot. And then I was obviously able to focus down targets with all the heavy guns that are being brought to the table. So let's get into the first game, and I fought Necrons, so let me give you the list. I just have it here on my phone, and then we'll discuss what happened. So going off the list that they had, we had Imitech Stormlord, Orokin the Diviner, Technomancers, 10 Immortals. So the Orokin and Imitech were with the Immortals, 5 Deathmarks, 3 Canop Scarab Swarms, 6 Wraiths, 1 Doomstalker, and 1 Canoptech Spider. The Spider was with the Swarms in Deep Strike or in Reserves, whatever it was. And then I believe the Technomancer was with the Wraiths. Now, I think this was a mixed game, mostly due to the fact that my Abominant was kind of on my right hand side of my deployment zone, and it was trying to face down the Wraiths and I believe it's the Doomstalker. Well, I didn't really want to face the Doomstalker, so I was trying to make sure that nothing was really in its firing line, and I wanted to get the Abominant into the Wraiths just because I had a mindset that they were going to do a lot of damage if they got into melee combat with any of the War Dogs, which was a correct assumption, as one of my Stalkers was also on that side to help out. And eventually, possibly in the 3rd or even the 4th round, they did get into combat with the Stalker, which really did do quite a bit of damage. The thing that really helped here was I definitely tried to focus on the objectives, and in this scenario, I can't particularly remember the overall mission, but in all the games, any objectives that were in your deployment zone were pretty much useless and gave no points. The only objectives were the ones in no man's land that actually gave any points or any actions could be done on, so everything had to be focused there, which did help out since all my War Dogs had to focus and move forward. And 3 of them, 1 Stalker, the Executioner, and the Brigand, kind of took the left flank and were able to slowly move around, in a sense, take points from the center but also take points from the left, while focusing on, was it the Immortal squad with Imitek and Orakan, and eventually he dropped in the swarms with the spider on the left, right in sight of pretty much all three of my war dogs, which really helped because I just absolutely demolished that squad, and they were pretty much, useless in a sense, so that those points were not helping him. And yeah, the Abominant didn't actually do that much in this game. He was very stuck trying to get around to actually get to the right hand side where the wraiths were, which at the same time I also think actually helped him, since by the time he did get there they had been focused so much on the stalker that he was able to again make sure that they weren't doing any damage. So the wraiths and the Doomstalker, especially the Doomstalker, wasn't able to take down any of the war dogs just because they were kept so busy and out of sight. And the death marks, unfortunately for them, there's nothing really here that they could have been able to effectively take down, so they were kind of just stuck at the back, unable to really do much. I think they might have shot once or twice at the very end to finally take down one of the stalkers that was stuck near the wraiths. But overall it was a back and forth. The missions, or was it the missions? Yeah, the cards that were coming up, they were okay, nothing too special, and it's just one of those things where I was making sure that I kept going on the left and the center, taking those objectives so that I'd get as many points as possible while doing whatever I could from the cards. And then eventually I also took and contested the right hand objective, which again stopped my opponent from getting the necessary points. And if I remember correct, let me just bring it up here, the points were 59 for the Necrons and I think it was 69 for me, so luckily enough I managed to win that. And I think that was my most difficult game in terms of what was happening, just because the Necrons were not as easy to kind of move and get out of the way, and they did take quite a lot of damage and absorbed it. It was very much up in the air until we were like at the end and we figured out all the points that came in, so very surprising. And it was the first time playing Necrons. Obviously I won't be playing the Knights again in the November tournament. I will be switching out to a Marine army, but further down the line when I do go back and start to do another Knights list, I'll definitely be keeping in mind what happened here. And at the time of this recording, the points already came out, the updated ones, which made I think the Brigand cheaper and the Abominant, if I remember correct. So again, going forward it really helps me out, and if I want to get a 2,000 point game, I think I actually need to either buy another packet of War Dogs and see if that will kind of make up the points. I don't think I'll be able to get a third big knight into a list. So 3 big knights and 6 War Dogs, I don't think that will fit in a 2,000 point. But for now, let us move on to my second game, which was against Orcs. The second game was against Orcs, which I had never played against before, and it was a very interesting list. We had a beast boss on Squigosaur, a boss Snickrot, a 10-man squad of Beat Snagga Boys. Actually no, 2 10-man squads of Beat Snagga Boys, and both of them were inside a Killrig each. And then a Gretchen squad and a Squighog Boys, which I think was with the beast boss on Squigosaur, so I think they were in one squad. Now this went really well for me, mostly due to the fact that I was able to kind of focus down things before they were able to do much against me. And what happened here was one of the Killrigs was in reserves. One of the Killrigs was hidden behind a building at the back of their deployment zone with the squad, and then a Gretchen squad was pretty useless in reality, so they were just hiding at the back, and they didn't really do much in this scenario. I think the hope was that he would use them to keep his home objective. We figured out that, you know, the back objectives are useless and you have to go into no man's land. And I think the big thing that happened, which really brought into my favor, was that his Squig Hog boys and his boss on the Squigosaur were on my right hand side with three of my, or was it two or three of my war dogs, and the way he had positioned them after he had moved them was a perfect line of sight for me, and I was able to wipe out that squad fairly quickly because I didn't really need to shoot other things because the kill rig was still maneuvering and the other one was still in reserves. So then I pretty much got rid of one of the biggest threats, since that mounted squad would have gone into WA and then would have gone into melee combat and probably quickly wiped one of the war dogs straight away and then moved on to the next. So it helped that a corridor was created with the line of sight, and I just focused everything that I could from what I had into that squad and into that HQ and quickly got rid of those. After which I then moved everything and focused on the first kill rig, destroyed it, if I remember correct, before it did much. Like, it got to the center, it did a bit of shooting, but then I was able to destroy it, and all the Snagger boys came out and they were trying to take the center objective, which then again they were perfectly primed in my shooting corridors, so then I was able to focus that squad down. The other kill rig obviously came in at the second or third round, which of course kind of was trying to take my leftmost objective in no man's land, and that took a bit longer to take down. And then Snickrot was moving about, and this is what I was saying when it came to, maybe I didn't say it, but I was really focused on playing the objectives first, movement first, and then target priority. And the reason why was Snickrot jumped into my deployment zone and did one of the mission cards where it sabotages one of the buildings, and if he is there for a turn, he's then able to get whatever number of points. So I made sure that I quickly moved, I believe it was the Executioner, back, got my line of sight, pummeled with the shooting, and I think I took him down in one shooting just because I also used some of the Havoc launchers on him and then finished it off with the Executioner. So what I found, and I'm not sure if I'm explaining it the best way of what exactly was happening, but definitely playing the objectives and movement for the Knights was working a lot better than kind of just focusing on target priority and then movement and objectives afterwards, just because there was so much being thrust on those three middle no man's objectives, and the home objectives were useless and not giving any points. So it really helped to focus down on movement and making sure that I would rather use a CP and use the Knights of Shade to move through a building and get an objective, even though it was, you know, sometimes the line of sight and the targets that were left for shooting weren't the best. And I did manage to eventually wipe out pretty much most of the Orc army. So by the end there was, I think, only the Gretchens were probably left, and all the other squads were, funnily enough, still taken down, even though they were second on my objectives, which was to make sure that I was, you know, accurately moving towards and getting objectives. So that's how the second game, and that came out to 24 for the Orcs and 61 for the Chaos Knights. Now let's discuss round 3 of the tournament, where I was playing against a Tau player, which luckily for me, they didn't focused their army on anti-vehicle, anti-tank type of weapons. Although they had the capabilities, they were definitely more focused on the actual objectives and making sure that they could eliminate a lot of like elites or infantry and kind of cause chaos when it came to actually obtaining points by getting an objective. So let's quickly go through their list, which was 1 Fireblade, Commander Farsight, Commander Coalstar Battlesuit, and then a 10-man Breacher team, a Devilfish, which the Breacher team was in, a Starsight Battlesuit, a Sun Crisis Sunforge Battlesuits. I think there was 3 in that if I'm correct, or 4 or 5. Honestly, I can't tell from this this list. I don't know how to actually break it down. And then a Ghost Kill Battlesuit, a squad of Stealth Battlesuits, 2 squads of Stealth Battlesuits actually. So definitely something that was there to put pressure on the actual objectives, but unfortunately in this case for my opponent, it was more difficult for them to put pressure on a Knights list. Specifically since I was able to always be shooting them because of the Havoc launchers, so they were always getting a wound plinked off here and there. When they were in my line of sight, I was heavily putting down that rain of fire, and it's a bit more difficult to take an objective off since each knight would have, I believe all the war dogs have an OC of 8, and at the same time they're fairly close. So even though one of the stalkers was on, I believe it was on the left hand side, and he put his team with one of the suits team, honestly I'm not entirely sure which one was which. I don't really know a lot of the Tau actual models and what they're called, but they went there trying to take that objective, and of course because they were in that nice window, I believe the Brigand and the Executioner were again perfectly positioned to start plinking off a lot of wounds and taking care of it. And this is where the focusing on the objectives and my movement really helped, making sure that I prioritized those, specifically because Farsight and his squad of battlesuits came into my backline, and I think it was the Executioner that was close, and instead of turning around and fighting, or because he wasn't quite in charge range, so turning around and staying there just made no sense because there was no way that the Executioner would have been able to take out that entire squad. So what did I do? I simply ran away towards the middle objective where I had a lot more firepower and I could help kind of clear the rest of the army that was suffering quite heavy losses. And then when Farsight and his squad got close, it was pretty much sort of the end stage, getting to being that loss for him. Since then I was able to turn around with everything and clear out that squad as well. And again, movement, going and using stratagem, that is the Knights of Shade. I went straight to a building and held up another squad. I think it was the Ghost Keel and the squad of battlesuits that was near. He jumped straight through the building to keep them busy and wiped out half of the squad, if I remember correct, or half of their suits, even though there were times where I could go toe to toe and focus on a squad that my opponent had. What was the most important thing to do is play the objective and maneuver in such a way that made it difficult for them to score. And at one point, because of the way that one of their suits was taking a battle shock test, I had placed my stalkers in such a way that it was surrounded by 3 war dogs and the big guy who's pretty much in the center, which then gave it a -4, so then he had to roll over a 10. Again, all of that started stacking up, and every time he was taking battle shock tests, which because of the big knight forcing some, and then I also made sure that one of the big things that I was using my command points was to, I think if I remember correct, there's a stratagem that forces another command or like another battle shock test. Definitely use those command points to maneuver in certain areas to block their access to objectives, to be able to force battle shock tests, which I know some people don't really think that they matter that much, but it did help when it came to the fact that, if I remember correct, from round 3 onwards, they shot at a worse ballistic skill and I shot at a better ballistic skill against them, and of course they weren't able to take objectives, so then they were pretty much just cannon fodder for my models to go in. And I think it ended up being that I managed to wipe out most of his units. I think there might have been a breacher squad that had like 1 or 2 models left at the very end. Again, it was very unexpected how everything was going, and I think that's the one big thing. Like, all of these matches turned out unexpected because of focusing on movement, getting the objectives, and then afterwards I'll do the target priority. And of course, since everything is pretty strong when it comes to shooting, I was able to just focus specific units and delete them much quicker than I would have been able to with the Custodes army that I did in September. So when it came to the third game, the Tau had 26, and then I managed to get another 69. So at the end, going 3 for 3, I managed to get a total of 199 points, which was pretty decent, and I believe the second player got 267 total, which they do have a game where they did 100 points. Again, I see it now and again, some people are able to get a full 100. I don't know how they managed to do it. I'm assuming either luck of the draw of the cards, or I don't know how it's done. I definitely would be interested to figure that out, and maybe in the future try something like that myself. And then the person in first place also got, one of their games was 100, and they added up to 281. So I managed to place third place, which was great. I had so much fun. The knights went down really well. A lot of people liked how they're painted, and technically the flowers and the grass I had to add after the tournament just because I didn't actually get to glue them on before the tournament started. The war dogs themselves, they are fully painted. I even have some decals that I did. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I pick one up. Hopefully you'll zoom in there. Nice little dog skull, I believe, or a wolf skull, and then let me see. Ah yes, the executioner has a nice half a pointed star and then a little flame decal there. Really nice overall, varnished, and then, as I said, I put the flowers at a much later time. Now, technically, I did break the rule that I had for myself where everything has to be fully painted. The knight is not fully painted. I mean, he is in a playable state. It's just that I didn't get around to doing this kind of electric static blue markings that I have on the top of the carapace. I didn't get to do it on the other armor panels, and of course I still need to give it some washes for the metals to kind of dull those down, and then varnish, and then also do the flowers. So yes, technically I broke my own rule where I said I wouldn't bring an army that isn't fully painted, but I was so excited since I managed to get the war dogs painted before the tournament. I was like, you know what, let me just bring the knights anyway, since, to be fair, the Abominant still looks like he could be, you know, finished. And I don't want to do another Custodes army a second time, and then for you guys looking at the video we'd be like, oh yes, another Custodes force. So it wouldn't have been that interesting, and I'm quite happy and glad that I managed to still bring the knights. And because I won third place, I did get a nice reward, a little voucher, which I then used to buy a squad of Space Marine Terminators and the Terminator Captain. Now, the voucher didn't cover the entire thing, so I obviously used the voucher and part of my own money. I will be using that to add to my force, and next tournament, which is in November, I will be making a Space Marine army. I believe I have most of it already painted, so I think I'll just give a quick video update before the tournament happens, and then obviously I'll do a tournament recap afterwards. And the goal is that in the new year, so in January and February, etc., I would like to be able to create my full black Templar list and make sure that I have enough for 2000 points. I currently have a mixture of Space Marines, which are Blood Angels, my own custom chapter, and of course Templar soldiers. So I think what I need to do is also create a video where I'll do an army showcase for that. I'll get that out so that, you know, I show everything that I have. Although the problem is there's a lot of models there. So I don't know if I need to break it down and maybe have one video where it's a showcase of all the metal Space Marines that I have and some of the classic models that I have, and then do one where I have my Blood Angels, and then I technically could probably do the homebrew chapter mixed in with the Templars, just because they're kind of on the same vein of design. So I'll have to figure that out, but that will be in the future, and stay tuned for next time when we'll do a Space Marine list and I'll show that off. I will try and finish obviously painting, and then I do have another big night and 2 more War Dogs. I will see what the points come out to. I don't think I'll be able to do a 2000 point army for knights, and I don't know if I really want to buy another 2 War Dogs at this point. I'm kind of focused on getting the Marines done so that I can have and be able to do a 2000 point tournament in the new year. Leave that up to me, we'll see how it goes. Highly recommend that you take your Chaos Knights to a tournament. I know it will probably be difficult at 2000 points. Don't, you know, leave them to be keeping dust in your boxes or in your storage closet. Knights are still fun and they look great on the table. A lot of people, you know, came over to look at the Knights and they were very impressed with what they looked like, and yeah, they definitely drew attention. So make sure to paint yours up and get them in a tournament, because at the end of the day, what's the point of just keeping them stuck in a box somewhere and never using them just because they're not, you know, your current meta? That doesn't matter. The whole point is that you play as many games as you can with as many fun options, and if you liked your Chaos Knight army when you first collected it, it only makes sense that even though it might not be the most competitive at big grand tournaments, go to your local tournament, go to your local gaming store. They will have similar 1000, 2000 point tournaments like they have at my one. Yeah, there will be some people who will be able to handle them, but there's also people who will have other fun lists that they're doing and they don't particularly care whether or not they're playing the meta. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to give me a like. Give me some comments down below what you think about the army, and of course, have you been using Chaos Knights for a tournament? What would you suggest to bring for Marines for my next 1000 point tournament? And yeah, we'll see when we do our first video for 2000 point tournaments. I don't know when this is coming out, so I don't actually know what my next video will be. I believe that the Imperial Agents Codex was before this, and I might be doing the Imperial Agents showcase next. So stay tuned for that. And make sure to subscribe. And then yeah, we'll be doing a hobby update soon, and I'll show what's on the painting block. So until then, take care folks.